water,
earth,
fire,
air. This is, what were you saying? This is Yip Yip,
hooray!
an Avatar podcast.
Can I get you a pillow to sit down on?
I'm trying. Are you talking to me? Talking to her?
No, she's sitting. I'm talking to you.
I need a pillow to sit on?
Well, we're standing, but I now feel like sitting.
Okay.
And a pillow is your solution?
Yeah, one pillow. We're going to sit on the floor. We're
I
in
see.
Morocco. How's that mushroom, Jessica?
So
it's like
mushrooming.
oozing.
I know.
Oh, an oozing
I don't
mushroom.
know why we're watching you eat it.
Hey, yeah. Oh. And it's on her thumb. Oh, there's this big piece on her thumb. Are you going to lick that off?
We don't need a play-by-play.
Jessica, will you tell me some things? I know your mouth is full.
Do you need
but...
a napkin?
Hey,
Hey.
Hey,
do
over
you have
there.
gross mouth noises?
We're do some, do some sound checks here. Oh.
I want to
Yeah.
be breathing heavy. I feel like it. I feel I'm like,
Was that like
Just ran a mile.
the ASMR? Is that what it's like, asthma or whatever? It was like,
They pop their peas.
I love to.
Today on my makeup tutorial. I don't think I'm doing it. I don't
Okay,
have the
yeah,
ASMR
it
voice.
creeps me out, whatever
oh
it
my
is.
god, I don't even know what we're talking about.
There's a lot about, they like tap the brushes. That's like really big in ASMR where they're like tap, 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 tap.
Wait, like on a podcast?
No, like people watch it on like YouTube. It'll be like a makeup tutorial, but it's like ASMR because she'll be like, and I'll just tap my brush and just lightly dab it. And she's like a makeup, and like people who like get tingly in their brain, I guess, when they hear certain
Ugh.
things. That's what ASMR is. And they just like watch these videos all day. Or I don't know if all day.
Tingle
but-
in my brain.
They're vegetables, and they're just hooked up watching these YouTube videos.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Everybody, welcome to the Yip Yip Hooray, an Avatar podcast Christmas special. It's me, Santa Jordan.
I was going to make that joke also.
That it's the Christmas special?
Yeah. But I think we should say the holiday special.
It's the holiday special. Well, it's Hanukkah right now, so it's the Hanukkah special.
Unless you're listening to this later, then it's just special.
And this is the Valentine special. Or if you're listening to this back in time,
I'm Katie
it's-
Claus.
oh, I'm Jingle Jessica.
Jingle Jessica. Well, see, mine was like not illiterate and it was not good.
Yep, but we're moving on.
Well, that's great. Things have come full circle, kind of. We are in a different location than when we started the podcast, but we were just, yeah.
I was just going to say, like, we are distanced. Jessica is way across the room.
So far away.
I know she is a very long USB cord, and I could not hit her with something if I threw it. So that's how far away she is.
Or how poor your aim is.
I think that's more what it is.
That's ridiculous. You know my aim is fantastic.
Moving on. So what were you saying? Oh, this.
We've come so far since that first fateful episode, sitting on a bed.
Not even a year. Almost.
I know, really,
Almost.
really bookended this year with some Avatar, which is phenomenal for me.
Jessica, what do you remember about the beginning?
I remember being in a bedroom. I remember using
Everything usually begins with the
a
bedroom.
laundry crate. I remember talking about my orange couch growing up, the Snick couch, and you guys not knowing what I was talking about.
Exactly.
It was-
Did you guys look it up later?
No.
Well, not your couch, but I know the couch of which you speak. I imagine the one that you owned was shag.
No, it was like a velvet.
Which, ooh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, for some reason that's Jordan's like kryptonite.
No,
Velvet?
It's not velvet. I enjoy
It's a
it.
velour.
No, velour is my kryptonite. If you were to rub me with velour, it would burn and I would lose that limb within 48 hours.
That's for stuff.
How did we ask you to do this podcast? I mean, I'm sure it's very cash.
Yeah, I feel like it was a text message maybe.
You don't think I got on one knee and was like,
Probably a year ago, right?
popped open a DVD case and was like, Jessica,
No,
will you...
even though you have proposed to me before, you did not propose a podcast to me.
And Jessica denied me. So,
Right, so that's how I got in.
But we were kids, it was kindergarten, and it was one of those. It was a worm. I proposed to her with a worm that was in the shape of a ring.
Going back to a year ago, it's crazy because Avatar wasn't even on Netflix then, and we didn't even know that it was going to be.
That's true. We had to watch it on the
Available.
DVDs, and it was like, I had requested them from the library.
Yeah, you in the in
Support
our
your
first-
local library.
Our first episode, you had this whole pitch for support your local libraries and check
Full
out,
circle.
check out Avatar.
Although right now I can't get anything from the library. It makes me sad.
Oh man, we have curbside pickup here.
We have curbside, but right now they're not doing it because of the, COVID.
Because the
that thing.
It's getting worse, newsflash.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this, don't just go into a closet. Don't be near anybody else. And that's what we're going to do.
No, I think we're encouraging people to come out of the closet. But moving on.
Sorry. Thank you. Things have ended. The show has come to a close for all of us.
Jessica just finished watching it.
I can't believe it's over.
I know we really artificially prolonged that for you.
Well, just like young Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, we really build empathy here with this podcast. That's what we're going for. Is this the longest you intentionally prevented yourself from binging a show?
Well, I watch one episode of Star Trek The Next Generation a week because I listen to 2 Star Trek The Next Generation podcasts. Yes. And now I'm full on Trekkie. I love it. You guys, if you haven't watched it, it's great.
Tea, Earl Grey.
And I like watching it once a week because you get your fill. And then I watch it on Sunday nights. And then I'm it's my show. And I'm ooh, let's watch. And then I had to stop myself. And when it's a 2-parter, it's exciting to be ooh, I can't wait till next week to see the second half of this 2-parter.
Wait, you watched Star Trek and Bake Off on Sunday nights?
Yeah.
This is a Sunday night girl.
Yeah, it's a Sunday night. That's my thing. Bake Off and Star Trek The Next Generation. Star Trek's 45 minutes, I think. Anyway, I'm on the final season of Star Trek right now, too, so it's coming to an end. But luckily,
TNG?
I have DS9 is the Korra of Star Trek The Next Generation.
But you haven't seen Korra. Or you just mean as in it's controversial?
As in it's in the same universe and property.
Does
it takes place in a different place. It's not on the Enterprise.
Further in the
future? It's
future?
closer in time. It's not in the future. I guess that would be Voyager, I think, takes place in the future. I don't know. There's lots of Star Trek ahead of me.
Okay, this isn't a plug for that. This is a plug for whatever the heck we do.
I'm
this
just
thing
saying
we're doing
I
for
enjoy
free.
artificially delaying watching it because sometimes when you just binge everything, it's good, but then a month later you're what happened?
And I feel empty inside somehow. I had an ex-girlfriend. It's neither of you. And we went to her parents' house, and I think it was a Sunday, and we binge watched 9 episodes of True Blood, which if you've ever seen True Blood, terrible idea. And it was the worst experience of my life. And then I stopped wanting to ever binge anything ever. So now I have a 2-episode limit.
But didn't you also binge Game of Thrones or something with
Yeah.
it
Also another awful decision. Stop binging, people. Have some self-control. Darn it.
Jessica, talking to you.
Yeah, totally. They just announced that they're rebooting True Blood, and I was wasn't True Blood on TV 5 years ago?
Just finished that. Why? I mean, we could reboot Game of Thrones and be fine.
Yeah, just a year later. It's a whole new cast, same exact storylines.
That's what we're going to do with this podcast, actually. We told Troy we're actually going to start from the beginning, same crew, and we're just going to re-watch it all and then get your take again.
There are podcasts, I don't listen to them, where they recap their own podcast.
Oof.
It's very meta.
Dang.
Doesn't sound great.
Jessica, overall, let's talk about the beginning of your Avatar experience to the end. At what point were you I'm not just watching this for them, I'm watching it for me?
I think early on, midway, probably through the first season, I would have continued watching it to the end. Not super stoked about it, but oh, this is a good show to watch. And I definitely think the second season is when it clicked in and I was ooh, what's going to happen next? What is the end game for this? And I gotta say, Azula, I think really changed the whole game for me. And I don't know why. And I feel she was Rob spoiler in the finale. I feel they did Azula dirty, and I don't appreciate that.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Why did they do Azula dirty?
Okay, so her dad leaves her back, and I'm why? He's not protecting her. She could have become the Fire Lord the day after the comet came. There was no reason for her to stay back. So I think he was just being a dick to her.
Just showing true colors.
Which we all know, Follower of the Year.
And I don't feel they built it up enough that she would all of a sudden crack and go crazy. Because it was literally everything she did after that didn't make sense to Azula, to me. It's yes, her friends betrayed her, and I could see that impacting her a little bit, but not causing her to, because she wasn't even killing people, she was banishing them, which is why would you banish the Dali? Then they could just come back and attack you. It didn't make any sense.
No, the Dali just got on a boat and they went back to the Earth
they're just
Kingdom.
gonna be peace, we're going to the Earth Kingdom. If you're afraid they're gonna turn on you, releasing them to the wild is not a better plan.
Hey, she was going crazy. Did you see that haircut she gave herself?
I know. I was like, oh, girl. But the bangs didn't look that bad. I think Azula
yeah,
kind of
totally.
rocked them.
Yeah, no, I was like, oh yeah, these are kind of cute.
Yeah.
no.
See, like, even when they're crazy, she's like, okay. And then when she's fighting Zuko
Oh my
and
god.
Katara, she goes even, like, crazier. And, like, really, I feel like seeing Zuko would, like, kind of recenter her almost. But I guess it just broke her more. I don't know. I just feel like her change to, like, absolute crazy pants, can't control herself was too quick. I feel like there should have been something between, like, because, like, what, the last time we saw her, like, her friends had just betrayed her, but in that moment, she had, like, there was no, like, glimpse into this affecting her.
Right, because May and Ty Lee betray her. The next episode, she's like on a warship trying to murder Zuko, and then
Which with like gusto, and then you
Gusto,
think
but
Azula-
I don't feel like she's, like, I feel like it was, like, in her normal level of gusto.
right,
And
then
it was
we
just
think-
like, I don't need Zuko anymore. He's not helpful to me anymore.
right, you know, she's gonna be an only child, and then we think Azula's going down, but then she
uses blue blast off power.
well, and like her hair pieces, right, to like
Yeah, she pulls it out.
stop herself on the yeah.
Resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but like, is the idea like Azula was put under so much pressure, and she like, could we agree that maybe it was part of it was a facade, and then she just broke? Because we never really get inside Azula. The only time we do is in the beach episode where she's like, oh, even my own mother thinks I'm a monster. She was right, of course. Also, doesn't Azula sound slightly British when she speaks? Like, there's a little English twang there. Just a little.
That's right.
She's a little posh.
She is
She's a princess.
right.
Or-
But was the pressure and ultimately the betrayal of Ozai what made her
yeah,
crack?
I think it was definitely like put all her eggs
he
in
didn't,
one
like,
basket.
betray her.
No,
He
but
promoted her.
but he let her down where she was like, no, we're doing this together. And right, it was like, you can't treat me like Zuko or like these other people. Like, I'm not that. And
Well, Azula wanted to help Ozai commit genocide on the Earth Kingdom.
Okay, yes. I was like, oh, we're straight talking about a second genocide right now. And I was like, what are you going to do with this Earth Kingdom when there's no people there?
You just, it's like the soil will create like a nice lush environment, and they'll repopulate over the
and
course of.
right, like the Fire Nation will just keep.
I do have a question about diverting a little bit from this Azula thing. I am curious, like, why the other nations let themselves be subjugated to the Fire Nation, and I think part of it is this idea that the comet came, maybe the rest of the world didn't quite know, like, what the Fire Nation did or was capable of to, like, eradicate the the air nomads, but they just know that they eradicated all of the air nomads. Maybe the rest of the world didn't know that it was because of this once-in-a-century comet that let them do that, and so the rest of the world was just, like, scared AF of the Fire Nation, and so they're like, oh no, you can colonize us, we're cool. And then
Well, I don't think wasn't it pretty forceful? Like, they sent troops in. I'm sure they, like, killed some people, and then the people were like, okay, I guess we're being subjugated. I mean, I think it was like just like colonization in our world where, like, people aren't like, hey, it's cool. They're just like, oh shoot, I'm either gonna die trying to fight this person or try to live under tyranny, and I guess I choose living under tyranny.
Well, I do think like the Earth Kingdom it kind of like levels the playing field a little bit when you have like these two elements that you're able to use. And so I think the Earth Kingdom probably could have put up a better fight, personally.
Right, but the Earth King wasn't aware that any of that was happening. So it's everything happening outside of Bong Se. So then it's just little villages with no army to protect them.
Well, that's true. I mean, they could create militias. I mean, you had some of that.
And it was 100 years later. So you don't know what it was like early on.
I do know what it was like. I was there with Boomy by his side.
And we all saw what happened to Boomy.
I know, it went just bananas. Okay, so back to Azula. She was done dirty. Were you surprised when she fights Zuko and the score changes to this like beautiful, like haunting string score?
I guess I wasn't because I don't remember that.
No, it's Jordan's favorite. Sometimes he'll just play it and we'll just listen to it.
Yeah, it's like your favorite song from the whole Avatar
Oh yeah,
soundtrack catalog.
I mean, that and like Leaves from the Vine. I mean, they're up there. Like, it's called Final Agni Kai. So like they go to fight and then it's like they shoot fire and it's like like all the sound cuts out and you just hear like the fire like over the strings, and it's beautiful and haunting, and it's this two siblings put on a path to fight each other. Poor Azula. Do you think Azula should have had a redemption storyline in the finale?
No, I think that would have been even more out of character in like the same episode where she goes crazy. Where she's only like, actually, team up with her, you're okay. Like that didn't, like
buddies.
Zuko didn't flip in one episode. Like Azula needs time. She can't do it all in one.
I mean,
Or
Zuko took
3-4 episodes.
Zuko took 2.5 seasons.
Exactly. Like, and like we know, like I feel like Azula could eventually, like, not get on their side and think that like, oh, I want to be on the side of good, but like be on their side because they're the people in power, and she can like, you know, use her wiles to like further a certain type of agenda. I think she'll always be Azula. I think eventually she could get more on the right side of history.
So you think it would have been more satisfying if the finale played out, her like with all of her faculties in place?
Wait, we have to take a pause. When you were rubbing your eye, you looked like Leslie, and I've never thought that ever. But it was like, I was like, whoa, Leslie with the tan. Okay.
Well, I'm sure the podcast listeners love this.
Okay. Yeah.
Just so you know, Jessica, you look like your sister right now.
Yeah, because Jessica, yeah. Does anybody ever tell you look like Leslie?
Yeah.
What?
They're
Even like I
siblings.
sound like her, like exactly like her.
I disagree with that.
Unbelievable.
I've heard both of your voices. They're different.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Sorry. Back it up.
Do Azula in the fight?
Yeah, I think it would have been more satisfying if Azula was at the height of her powers and Zuko put up a good fight against her, and then maybe with the help of Katara, they were able to overcome Azula. I just feel like they made such a strong, powerful foil for Team Avatar. Because again, like, Fire Lord Ozai is this like non-entity because we never see him or thing, but we like know Azula to a certain point. We've seen her hang out with her friends. We've seen her do a fake confession at the beach bonfire. We like know what her relationship is, and then just for her to like crack and go crazy, and then like Zuko like defeats her. And again, like obviously, it doesn't all go smile and roses for Zuko and Katara, but like why, like it's like, oh, but I don't know, to me it almost is like, oh, but she's a girl, so she cracks under the pressure and she goes crazy, and then of course like she loses. Like I don't know if I would have felt the same if she was a male character.
It is fair that maybe the problem in the writer's room was like, well, we know if Azula and Zuko fight, like Azula's significantly more talented, and like with the power of the comet, like she will win. And so they had to like give her some sort of handicap, I think.
Well, I feel like maybe they should have, to overcome that, they could have used the dragon teachings that Zuko just learned. Azula hasn't learned from the dragons. She doesn't know. And he saw I wanted like all the colors of the fire to like, I wanted like Zuko to have like more colors in his fight against the blue lightning, and then overcome her through that and through his like dance fighting via dragons. That would have been what I wanted.
But something that does happen is this happens throughout the series, is that the way Zuko ultimately defeats Azula is with the technique that Iroh teaches him in episode 3, which is to break your roots. And it's this like breakdance move that he does. He does it for the first time against Zhao, and he does it throughout the series. And so it's a really quick blink and you miss it moment. But yeah, he does like his little breakdance move and creates like a fireball, and Azula gets caught off guard. Were you surprised that he taunted her into using lightning, and then was surprised when she was like, oh, actually, I'm going for Katara, sucker?
Well, right. I mean, I was kind of like, because I felt like not bad for Azula, but it just like bad for her, how her character is being treated, or like how the writers wrote her to be weaker. And so then I was like, yes, of course she's going for Katara. And I was like, and of course Zuko doesn't think about this because this is Zuko we're talking about. I was kind of upset that Katara wasn't like, you know, kind of like ready to defend herself. Like, there's a fight going on. Like, just because you aren't tapped in yet, you should be prepared for you to get some like flack.
Yeah, no, I thought that was out of character too, because it was like, one, why are you standing right there? Two, we know crazy girl shoots lightning. I mean, this all sorts of stuff. Again,
Like,
she
she's
should
not
have
going
been
to depend on Zuko to save her.
right. And like Katara's like a water bending master. Like, right, there's no way that she'd be like, oh God. It's like, so what's happening?
No, she was respecting the rules of the Agni Kai. It was just a one-on-one duel.
She's not, whatever. She has
Katara's-
no respect
I'm
for
not saying
Agni
she
Kai.
needed to jump in without, but like, you can be on game, like watching and like prepared without getting involved.
Maybe she was so disturbed with how Azula hit her descent into madness. She she was just immobilized.
I don't know. I mean, I've said it once. No, I've said it more than once. I've said it many times. Avatar is not perfect. There is definitely a lot of room for improvement.
But it's pretty damn close.
Well,
Also,
unless we're talking
I mean,
about
I
the
enjoyed the
animation.
episode. I'm just saying.
maybe
I
Katara
wrote
was
it.
contemplating her feelings in the Zutara. She was like, Zuko. Maybe she was just distracted with how hunky and charming he is. And she was like weighing her options. Like, well, Aang's into me. Zuko, that's a question mark. And then she was surprised.
You're like, well, the play. I mean, we look pretty good together.
So that's what was on her mind, obviously. Thinking about boys. See, he gets into trouble all the time. Me, I'm like directing traffic, thinking about boys. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, this car's coming for me. It's rough. What did you think? What did you think about the Aang Ozai fight in the end?
I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it. Like, we knew that Aang was going to win, right? And then I ultimately knew he wasn't going to kill Ozai. Although they really tried to make you, like, all the avatars telling him, like, basically, like, straight up, you need to kill that guy.
Yeah, I mean, were you surprised that he chatted with so many past lives and that they all doled out, like, the same advice?
Yeah, I, like, wrote down their advice. Roku, you must be decisive. As someone who's very indecisive, someone just telling me to be decisive is not going to make me decisive. Worst advice.
Amen.
Kyoshi, only justice will bring peace. Okay, solid advice. We all know Kyoshi, a solid avatar.
Oh, that sounds good.
And then when he was like, I shouldn't have asked Kyoshi. And I was like, whatever, Kyoshi's the best. And then, I don't know. What's the name of the waterbender surfer avatar?
Kuruk, the surfer avatar.
Kuruk. Yeah,
bro
he was
avatar.
like a surfer. He even like talked like a surfer bro. He was like,
Hey, man.
piece of good
Canonically, so Kuruk in the Kyoshi novels, we find out he died when he was like 33, but he appears way older as the spirit. So either he just aged really poorly, or the writers were like, oops. He seemed like really old in the spirit.
Well, I mean, it's stressful to be the avatar.
It's true. Look at Aang.
I mean, he just made me think of Finding Nemo. And I guess that sea turtle's really old, but he acts like he's 30, so.
Man, there you go.
And then they were like the same to me. I was like, I could see that sea turtle being an avatar.
Yeah, but Kuruk was apparently like a really selfish avatar. Like, you didn't really give a darn. Just kind of cared about number one.
And surfing.
Surfing.
It's more of a Patrick Swayze and Point Break.
Everyone cares. Even
you.
if they can't express it, show it.
But he said actively shape destiny, which I feel like was like better than saying you must be decisive. It was just like, you need to take action. Like, your actions matter. And that's not necessarily like in the moment. And of course, it's like, okay, you're telling me I need to actively kill this guy. But that doesn't mean anything. It's just like, you can't just stand by and hope everything's going to work out.
I do think, Kuruk's advice is way better than Roku's. Roku, I don't think was a good avatar. I don't think he's a good guide for Aang. Not at all.
Well,
Not into that
right.
relationship.
No.
Yeah, Roku, this is all his fault. Everything that we watched. it's
Well,
because of
Fire
him.
Nation.
I know, I can't trust him.
It's like a Slytherin.
Best friends with the Fire Lord? Okay, like, you're complicit, Roku.
And then Yang Chen. Did I say that right?
Yeah, ooh. But this is just like in the series, like in the lore, it's like everyone like loved Yang Chen, but everyone kind of like forgot about Kuruk. So it's impressive that you're like, I don't know, surfer guy.
Well, I wrote Korug, but I was like, is that right? Did I write it right? And then Yang Chen's, like, everyone else had, like, actively shape your destiny. And then Yang Chen, I was like, oh, this is long. I can't write this all down. Selfless duty calls you to sacrifice your own spiritual needs. But then he said, like, 2 more sentences. But I was like, okay, also solid advice, but kind of weird to be like, you kind of need to betray your own teachings and life upbringing as the avatar. It didn't really make sense to me.
Well, I think Katie had a good take on that. It was like, because Aang is the last airbender, he feels even more like attached to those teachings and he can't like forsake them as other avatars could. They're like, oh, I'm kind of like separate than these other people.
Right, like you can take it with a grain of salt, be like, yes, I do like represent this element, but as the avatar, I really represent all of them.
Right.
In perfect balance. But right, for Aang, yeah, he is the last. It's like his teachings are different than everyone else's. And yeah. Okay. Keep going. This is good.
But I just feel like they were good teachings. The air nomads, they weren't like teaching them crazy stuff, like being like selfless and not trying to actively hurt people and only hitting out in defense, which is what he's doing. So yeah, but then to just like pull up with following the lion turtle,
Lion turtle.
which Okay. Can we talk about the lion turtle?
Some Deus Ex Machina.
Okay. Okay, so when Aang's on this floating island, I was like, this is like a freaking Pokemon he's on, right? He's on a Pokemon.
What? What, Blastoise?
No, did you watch Detective Pikachu?
I did. Yeah.
So remember they like go to like
Oh,
the
yeah,
laboratory and there's I don't remember what they're called, like
they're Torteras.
Yeah, he was on one of those, but with a lion face. I don't know I mean, that probably Pokemon appeared post Avatar in the Pokemon world because I don't think it's one of the original.
It's true. It's Gen 4.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, this is crazy. But okay, so then now I'm like going way back. So they're like, Zuko, your whole life is chasing the Avatar. You're an expert on this. You'll help us. And he's like, I know exactly what to do. And he just goes ask someone else. I was like, what? All this is just like, actually, I just have one person that I know who can do this better. Like, I have never, like, was he never able to track the Avatar? Anyway. Then,
He always had buddies. It was Iroh the whole time.
so just because he was on some turtle in the middle of the ocean, I don't remember, Anteater, what was her special friend?
Jude,
June
June.
and the Shearshoe.
Shoo. He like smells and he's like, doesn't exist. He does exist. He's in the ocean. It's like being on a boat, just on an animal. Like, does the lion tortoise like have some kind of like
Turtle.
Sorry,
I
turtle.
think because it's like, it was like.
I guess
one
in the
of-
water it should be a turtle. I don't know why I keep saying.
Can you imagine if it was a tortoise though, just like walking around?
across the sand?
It'd be like Howl's Moving Castle. Like, oh,
that'd be cool.
no. So I think because the lion turtle is like one of the ancient creatures of the world, it probably has like some spiritual energy that kind of negate anything. Is my interpretation. Just
Smell.
kind of smell. Yeah, the senses all gone. But I do think that the spirit world was actively conspiring with the side of good to kind of course correct history throughout the finale, because the lion turtle like literally takes Aang right in the path of Ozai. Just all these things kind of happen. Where you're
Right. I mean, when Aang like leaves, and I was like, is he sleepwalking? Is he in a trance? Like, what is going on right now?
And because Aang is like the bridge between the spirit world and the physical world, I do think there was some sort of like act of providence going on in the finale. I don't think Aang would have been able to solve all the problems by himself.
Right. So when the lion turtle talked, which I was like, okay, this is the first animal we've seen talk. It was really the spirit world talking to him, you think?
I think he's like a spiritual creature. Like the lion turtle, like in series lore, is like one of the original creatures. When you'll see eventually, the lion turtles are the ones who bestowed the power of the elements on the people.
Oh, whoa.
So...
Yeah, so don't be down on the lion
I'm
turtle.
not down on the lion turtle.
But the lion turtle, like...
And we saw Momo and Apatog. Remember?
Okay, but like...
Momo.
He was in a post-sleep shroom state.
So what did you think about just that episode, The Old Masters? That's the episode before things like really get crazy. We have Aang talking to all of his old lives, but then we have... quote unquote, the old people show up, who we find out are all part of a secret society. Like, were you surprised that, like, here comes Boomy and Piandao and Paku?
I mean, I was surprised for a second, but I was like, of course this is what's happening. This is great. Finally, we get these guys back. Of course, Boomy, who's, like, ripped. And I was like, all these old men are, like, super muscular. I was like, how do they still have muscles? Like, they should have been, like, starving. Like, he was, like, in that cage. Like, who's feeding him up there?
Well-fed. They respect a king. Plus, he was earthbending, like, all sorts of crazy stuff. He was probably earthbending snacks to himself. Mm-hmm. Also, can Boomy metal bend? I don't know. He, like, shoots, like, those rocks into the cage and then, like, frees himself. Whatever. Boomy.
But when Iroh was like... I'm going to go back to Bong Sing-se. I'm going to take it because I saw that vision and now I understand what it is. And then I'm going to go back to my tea shop and have my tea shop life. I was like, is he going to die? Like, that was my initial reaction because it was way too positive.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, there's no way everything's going to go fine. And I was like, this is setting it up. Oh my God, he's not going to die. But he did die, or he didn't die, which I was excited about. But I really was like, wait a second, because it's like I hadn't even considered it that he could die. Oh. And then I was like, oh no.
Like, well, I guess Mako's gone, so.
But then we didn't even see like anyone really get hurt the whole Bong Sing-se. They just kind of just like.
No, those old men, like they take Ba Sing Se to the ground. They are fierce protectors.
Well, yeah, it's like years of pent up energy.
But were you kind of like, what took you so long?
You know, they needed that extra motivation. So, wait, what did you think about Uncle Iroh and Zuko's reunion?
It was good. So Greg didn't know that Iroh had died, and then later when I told him, which I forget that he doesn't listen to the podcast and isn't here to listen to our conversation, so he doesn't know everything that I know. But he was like, oh yeah, the voice did sound different. And I was just like, yeah, it would have been better if it was the original voice. Because you could tell, like, even the line readings, I didn't feel like
The warmth.
it was Uncle Iroh talking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it felt like there wasn't enough, like, jokes interspersed with the like, it was very, like, heartfelt, like, I'm proud of you, like, I'm not mad at you. And it was good, but I feel like there wasn't enough, like, and I'm also making tea on the side while we're having this conversation. Or I don't know, like, it was good, but there was, like, a little, like, secret sauce of Uncle Iroh that I felt like was missing from that moment. It made me sad.
Was Greg crying?
No.
Were you crying?
No. I actually didn't get choked up at all.
Dang.
I know.
I mean, Katie and I, like, we shed many tears, and this is not the first time we've watched the finale. Like, I
Not
ugly
even
cry.
the first time in, like, the time of a month. Like, we were, like...
That sure was the second time we watched the finale.
Right. And I was, like, with Troy, and I'm like, I just, like, can't. It's too much. Because you know what? And the other thing is if you go in it watching and, like, thinking about how that's not the same Iroh. So I just feel like you have to put that on the shelf and be like, no, it's Iroh. It's a little... At least it's Mako's friend, you know, who voiced it.
Yeah, I
It's
almost
there's-
feel like if they would have had him talk more during the season, we would have gotten used to the voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have been more Uncle Iroh, but since it's been used so sparingly, and then all of a sudden he's talking a lot, and then it's just a lot in a slightly different voice, that was what was jarring.
But could you be like, well, he was roughed up. I mean, he was in jail, prison for,
Treated very poorly.
you know, so maybe he was a little rough around the edges anyway.
I don't know. I think that doesn't go with Iroh's character, really, because I feel like he can take hardship pretty well and bounce back.
Well, not like that. I mean, I think he really believed in Zuko and was very disappointed and hit a pretty low point.
But then got ripped.
Then he got motivated.
But, I mean, when you reflect on the season as a whole, like, thinking about Book 3 of Avatar, like, I don't think about it and miss Iroh, but I also would love to have had him more. But I'm curious, like, what they could have done that would have been satisfying for us. Like, what do you think we should have seen to get more Iroh?
Well, it's just like, how many episodes was it from when we saw him escaping the jail to when we finally see him again on screen?
Like, almost 10.
Yeah, so I feel like in that whole thing, it would have just been nice to get a couple glimpses of him. Like, even if we didn't know what he was doing, but, like, just, like, you see the, like...
Him sharing tea.
Well, the sign of the White Lotus. It just, like... And then, like, the nod. Or, like, you know, just, like, little glimpse of him. Like, and be like, oh, he's scheming up something.
I mean, him getting the band together would have been really satisfying to watch. Like,
Yeah.
shows up at, like, P and Dow's place, and he's, like, sword fighting people. But maybe you don't know it's Iroh. Yeah, I mean...
And, like, along the way, he teaches people how to make tea properly.
Aww.
And he's still, like, you know, still rocking that tea life.
There's room for improvement, you guys. So for the reboot, got to get it right.
I mean, did you catch that Aang had the opportunity to kill Ozai during the final battle, but then took the path of showing him mercy by, like, shooting the lightning off, like, into the distance? Like, what was that moment like for you?
I mean, yeah, because, like, I guess I was saying a while ago, they did build it up to the point where I thought maybe he would go through with it and kill Ozai. And then as soon as he didn't, I was like, yeah, this would be like a betrayal. He's also like a tiny little boy. He shouldn't be killing people.
I know. People are always like, oh, like, Aang's a pacifist. Like, he doesn't, like, hurt anybody. But there's a moment in the very middle episode of the series, Book 2, The Desert, where angry Aang, like, freaks out and kills a buzzard wasp. Like, you know that thing died because he shoots off, like, a blast of air and it falls down.
I think if Ozai would have killed Appa, he would have killed Ozai.
Oh, my God. Can you
I bet
imagine?
feel like that would be something that would provoke him. You know?
Yeah, he goes into Avatar state and just like, well, sorry.
Yeah.
But do you think Ozai, like, realized how Aang learned how to redirect lightning? Do you think that was part of, like, was he like, oh, no?
Like, I don't know. I don't think Ozai gives people enough credit to, like, I don't know. I don't think so.
Because, like, the ability to redirect lightning, I mean, as far as we know, the only person that knows how to do that is Iroh, who taught Zuko, who used it on Ozai.
Right.
And so I do love that both Aang and Zuko both had opportunities to, like, kill Ozai by redirecting his own power against him, and then both chose not to.
Right, which probably Ozai feels like they are both weak for not doing it.
Right. Yeah, because then Ozai really, like really tries to, like, kill Aang, and, like, that episode ends with him berating him and his people for being weak and how they don't deserve to, like, live on his world. And
I will say when Aang finally does his, like, Ty Lee adjacent but permanent work on Ozai, I was like, oh, is he just, like, killing him? Not killing him, but, like, sending his spirit to the spirit realm in, like, a more pacifier way? Like, I wasn't sure he was still going to be within this world. Thought maybe he would, like, somehow, like, bring him into alignment and then send him to the spirit world like a better person. Like, I didn't think, and then I was like, well, he can't be doing this, and then all of a sudden he's like a different person, and he's like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, now I, like, understand the woes of my way. But it was almost a little disappointing that it was just like, well, you'll never be able to firebend again, because it was like, well, we've seen Ty Lee do that to people.
But not permanently.
Right, not permanently.
Well, and it's like taking away his power, like his real threat.
Well, that all, like, he had no threat without his bending. Is it an interesting idea that, like, his people weren't going to keep following because he ruled based on fear, so no one's going to be like, well, I gotta. Well, Greg made the point, like, okay, but, like, what about all those, like, war crazy Fire Lord generals? They're not just going to, like, why would they start following Zuko now? They hate Zuko.
You gotta follow the monarchy, man. Like, oh, I guess it's you. It is interesting to, like, remove this thing that kind of looms over the series, Ozai's firebending, this thing that kind of sent Zuko on his journey, this thing that damaged Zuko, and then Aang removes it. And I think it's another thing where you just see, like, Aang and Zuko's storylines kind of parallel and how important they are to each other. But yeah, I agree with Greg. Like, just because you remove someone's, like, superpower doesn't mean, like, your legions of followers are just going to all of a sudden bend the knee to Zuko because he won an Agni Kai against Azula.
Well, you could say that about what's happening politically currently.
True dat.
Right, like, if there was another season, it would probably be, like, one of the Fire Lord generals trying to, like, take control of the Fire Nation from Zuko. Would probably be, like, you know, at least part of the storyline.
I do think one of the comics, because the stories continued in a series of graphic novels, I do think one of the more recent storylines has been these people who are loyal to Ozai. But I think the general, like, sense of the Fire Nation would be like, oh, we're just gonna, you know, life will continue as normal, because, like, as we spent the first half of the book 3 of the kids, like, going to just random villages, I mean, some of these people didn't even, like, really consider the war. It was like, oh, no, it's just us sharing our, like, prosperity. And
Right. It's more just, like, the military and...
Yeah. Like, yeah. And then I don't know, like, necessarily the aristocracy class. Like, obviously, May's uncle was fine with Zuko. Well, because he has an in with Zuko, right? Like, if he hadn't had an in with Zuko, do you think he would have felt differently?
Mm-hmm.
And if Zuko was like, I'm going to abolish... and be like the aristocracy and everyone's going to be the same, they probably would be against him, you know, if he did some crazy moves like that.
Right. So were you satisfied ultimately with the ending of the show?
I was, other than, like, and then I was like, well, obviously they can't go into all this. So it was glossed over a little bit that it was like, and now the Fire Nation is fine.
And now we're good again.
Yeah, we're great now. And I was like, okay, a little bit, but it's also like, okay, well, what are they going to have another season that's just like cleaning up everything? Because that's not also that satisfying to watch when you already got rid of the big bad.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I thought it was sweet that we, like, end back in the Earth Nation and they're, like, getting tea, having a good time. So it was like a tease. Zuko's like, tell me about my mom. No resolution. I was like, okay, why even bring it up again if you're not going to do anything about it?
For drama. They apparently had storyboarded, like, a whole thing, like, following down that line of Zuko, but I don't know, they just kept that part.
I was upset we didn't see Azula, like, in a jail cell next to her dad or wherever she is. Like, okay, so no closure other than, like, seeing, like, her, like, in, like, whatever.
But we agree that final scene we see of Azula is, like, just basically disturbing. Like, she's chained up, she's howling like an animal. Like, it's just so sad.
It is sad. That's why I wanted to see her
we should have had one more scene.
Yeah.
You know, or even Zuko.
Maybe she's like doing like forced community service and she's still like sassy and like annoyed about it, but like, you know, and like Ty Lee's like in charge of making sure she does it correctly and she keeps like taking away her firebending. Something cute. Although I did love Ty Lee becoming part of the Kyoshi Warriors. I think I wrote like the happy ending for Ty Lee I didn't know I wanted.
I do appreciate like just Suki's character and how much she was able to contribute in the final stretch of the series.
I at one point wrote down, should Suki do better than Sokka? I mean, I think they're very cute together, and I love them. But sometimes Sokka, like, it's like, oh yeah, like this whole plan would have been terrible without Suki. And again, like we said before, I think in a past episode, like if Suki was with them the whole time, things would have gone a lot smoother. Mm-hmm. And it's sweet that she loves him, but like sometimes we're just like, Sokka, you gotta up your game for this girl.
Hopefully he does. That would be good. And then I think Toph, speaking of doing dirty, I think Toph didn't quite get the satisfaction at the end of the series I would have liked.
Yeah, she's like, oh, Zuko, we're gonna have our heartwarming, like, fun adventure together. And I got so excited. I don't know where it is in my note. Oh, yeah, yay, Toph and Zuko. And then, like, minutes later, oh, poor Toph. Like, I was like, so quickly he, like, shuts her down. I was like, Zuko, like, it's okay. You can have a good time with Toph. What's your problem?
I know.
It was the age difference.
But, I mean, it wasn't to her advantage to be up in an airship. Although that, like, metal bending scene where she, like, becomes, like, an Iron Man and then, like...
crawling on the ceiling?
Yeah, it was insane. It was great. But, yeah, poor Toph. Always, you know, second fiddle to everyone else because she came in the second season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think there's a future with Toph and Sokka romantically? That's kind of a weird question. But there's, like there's the sparks there. I think there's potential when they're not, you know, 12 and 15.
With Toph and Sokka? I don't see it.
I've always felt it, and I want it.
Well, right, because Toph's definitely into Sokka.
Yeah.
But we've addressed in the series, everyone's into Sokka. I mean, I'm into Sokka.
He does have a lot of game. It'd be funny if Azula had a crush on Sokka. That'd be such a funny combo.
So, what was it about that final scene of Katara and Aang smooching?
I was just like watching it and I was like, I don't want to be watching these children kiss right now.
Yeah, no, it's not a satisfying and
I was like,
ending.
I don't understand why Katara's into this. Like, I understand this is what Aang wants, but like, we've seen her like a boy. Like, she liked Jet. And she's liked another boy, didn't she?
I mean, she seemed like she was interested in Haru.
Yeah.
You know she's into Zuko. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
At certain points, but then I feel like when he came back and joined their team, she was like never back into him.
No.
And
it was the
just,
mustache.
Like, whatever. Which is funny because Aang's like so paranoid about it. And at that point, you're like, dude, look at the signs. She's not into this guy. But I never really I feel like she's like open to it, but like, and she cares a lot about Aang, but I don't know. The kiss, it just didn't feel right to me.
I mean, especially like doing the podcast and kind of analyzing like every episode and thinking about like Katara's like where she's at and where Aang's at. And even though like they're in a war and Aang has these responsibilities, you still don't really get, especially in season 3, you don't get like that relationship. They play with it in book 2 in a few episodes, and that felt better. But I think Katara had more growth. Like she just outgrew Aang in book 3, where Aang kind of stayed the same.
Right, which is interesting because you think he of all the people should be growing in book 3.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, yeah. I mean, Aang did have growth, but ultimately, like he was just kind of like the same character.
Well, right, and there was so much pressure about like, are you ready for this? And you know, are you going to be able to do what you were born to do?
But even up until like the last couple of days, I mean, he's like building sandcastles. They're like surfing.
They were all screwing
and like
around.
Zuko's the only one who's like, guys.
I do think the writers and just the episode in general kind of wasted valuable time in like that first episode of the finale where we're just kind of like goofing around for like 3/4 of it.
I was like, they never tell Zuko their plan. Like, you're all on the same team.
Right.
No, it didn't make sense.
Also, how did they know when the comet's coming? I mean, we're never told when the comet is coming. We're just told that it's coming like by summer's end. Like, is it late September? And they're like, well, I guess it's any day now.
Because they knew when the eclipse was coming because of the library, but they didn't have the exact dates of the comet.
Which, I mean, okay, but I would like to have seen that. To be like, okay, well, we know. Well, I don't know. How do they know when it's coming? Unless Roku, like, secretly was like, hey, man.
Roku always tells them.
No, he does not. Ugh.
Well, I would assume the Fire Nation tracks that, because if it comes we know when, like, Halley's Comet it's coming by or whatever.
Well, maybe Zuko
maybe it's
told
just
them
common knowledge so that they know,
That's true. I mean, they did spend...
You would think the Fire Nation would have, like, festivals that day.
Right. I mean, all right, firebending competition.
I mean, maybe the rest of the Fire Nation was. Maybe the rest of the Fire Nation was having a really good time while the military enacted genocide.
I would have liked, like, in the middle of the Ozai Aang battle, like, just flash over to the Fire Nation and they're, like, partying down.
Everyone's having a good time. What was that about Ozai?
I said, Ozai is fit, capital F-I-T. Because, yeah, he, like, takes off his, like, robe and then he's, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger underneath that thing. Like, I was, like... We saw Iroh working out. We never see Ozai working out. I don't know. It just seemed like insane muscles that they were giving him.
I mean, there's some good genes in that royal family. I mean, when Zuko's shirtless, I mean, Homeboy's looking pretty good too. You know what I'm saying?
It's true.
But man, when Aang is...
Are you talking about Aang? What about Sokka when he's shirtless?
No. I was going back to, like, Katara being into, like,
Yeah.
Zuko or Aang. It's like, well, obviously
Aang.
Aang's got the bod. And...
I mean, there was no reason for Katara not to get with Zuko. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he wasn't really with May. She's in jail. Like, we don't have to think about her.
Okay.
They're not a thing.
But, if we just overlook Aang being a child, and they do share some nice moments, and they've been through a lot together, and obviously they care about one another. And so I could buy into it. But yeah, it wasn't... I don't think that they did enough to really make me believe that that was an appropriate ending and like that was some sort of like happy ending for the two of them. I don't know.
I feel like we have Sokka and Suki as like a cute couple that we're like following and they're flirty and they're doing things. Like, I don't need that resolution for Katara and Aang. Like,
it would have been better if we got the same shot.
Grow up a couple years and then get together. I'm fine with that, but like at the current point of time, it's just too much.
Because we have that epilogue. Like, that epilogue doesn't need to take place like with the crew that we know. Like, the epilogue could have been like a Deathly Hallows-esque epilogue where we fast forward a little bit.
We're dropping off their little benders at Bender School.
We've named our children after our dead friends.
Whoa.
The cabbage
like,
salesman's there?
Yeah,
cabbage salesman should have been there. I just realized. Total failing.
Cabbage
That's how
guy.
it could have been in season 3. They were in Bon Sisei.
He just looks up and the fire comes, destroys his cabbages.
Oh, I'm saying it's a happy ending. Like, he's like at the table over, like gives them like a look and like drinks his tea.
No, he takes a healthy bite of a cabbage.
Yeah.
Like Chairman Kaga.
Or like walking in, Aang like accidentally like hit something and it like causes his like cabbage cart to clog. Because he should have said my cabbages.
But obviously, I mean, the crew at Nickelodeon probably know now, obviously, that people are really into Cabbage Guy. But maybe in that moment, they didn't.
He doesn't show up at all in season 3.
Right.
Well, they name check him in the Ember Island Players.
Yeah, a very knowledgeable cabbage merchant.
Yeah. It was very exciting. So they knew. They must have known. Or also, they were really into Cabbage Guy.
It's true.
Because he's the best.
The execs were like, actually, can you guys tone this down?
Yeah.
I have a cabbage allergy. It's very severe. Jessica, I'd like to know who had the most satisfying storyline in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
The most satisfying storyline.
Cabbage Guy.
Cabbage Guy. Finally became a playwright. And we knew that he needed that all along.
The man of the arts. He's a Renaissance man.
I almost want to say Uncle Iroh. Because
Bold.
he gets to live his dream of being a tea merchant and putting the Fire Nation back on track and like having this second son like come back to him on his own and like follow the right way. And I mean, would any of this have been possible without Uncle Iroh? It was very important. I feel like that was very satisfying. You saw the whole arc. I feel like Katara, like, as the Ember Island players say, she's always talking about how having hope and being good, and like that was consistent. And she did grow, and we did see her like confront her mom dying and the guy. But like, I don't know, like I just felt like Katara was such a staying presence the whole time that like her evolution wasn't as satisfying. Zuko is just like so emo, and I'm just never gonna be like the emo character's #1 fan. It's just like not who I am. I can't like put up with it for so long. I was happy for Zuko. I thought it was weird that like they said he was pure of heart now after not being pure of heart. I didn't agree with that. I think he'll be a fine. Although, do we think Zuko's gonna be a good Fire Lord? I don't know. I'm not so sure.
It's really interesting considering Zuko and his journey, because the first time I watched it, like I wasn't invested in Zuko until like the book 2 finale, where you get like this opportunity for redemption for Zuko, and I had never considered that for him. I mean, I wasn't really considering it because it was a new type of show for me at that point. Like you really, as a 15-year-old, I wasn't experiencing shows where like characters have opportunity for redemption. Like he was the bad guy, and so for me to like have that betrayal from Zuko and then know that that opportunity was still there, all of a sudden I was like hungry for what Zuko could be. And I'm curious for you, because you did not know Zuko was on a path to redemption when you first watched it at the beginning, right?
I didn't know. I suspected.
And so for me, like rewatching, like all of a sudden Zuko's story becomes so much more satisfying to me, like every time I watch it, and you just pick up more about like Zuko's motivations and where he's coming from, and the fact that his heart's really not that into capturing the Avatar. It's just out of desperation. It's he doesn't really have much more going on. And so yeah, I do think Zuko is pure of heart, and I do think he just had a really rough few years.
I do think he had the most growth of all the characters, because he had the farthest to go from. Like, yes, he's being manipulated into thinking he needs to support the Fire Nation and do what they're doing, even though all along we find out that he's never really had his heart into the mission of the Fire Nation. He wants to protect the soldiers and, like, thinks there's a value of human life, like, is a reasonable person. Yeah. And he has this, like, bumbling uncle along with him, and he's just, like, like, at the beginning, he has, like, no real respect for his uncle, it seems like. And then by the end, he's, like, figured out how to be on the right side, figured out that his Uncle Iroh is, like, the most important person in his life and really took care of him when he needed it. So I agree, it's a really great arc. It's never going to be my favorite.
Totally. Well, it's like the Zuko thing. Like, I wonder if a lot of that growth was just Iroh's like persistence and just like, I know you're not listening, but somewhere deep down subconsciously, I feel like I'm making a change. And almost like through osmosis, like Iroh's like infiltrating Zuko. And it's interesting to think that Iroh was maybe actively just grooming Zuko to be Fire Lord, because it's almost like correcting like Ozai's rule, because Iroh was supposed to be Fire Lord and then his son was supposed to take over for him, Lu-Ten, who was killed. And so it is interesting for Iroh to kind of get his own kind of legacy back in that way. It's like, I will instill in you these ideas that I think are important, and now Zuko can rule like that, theoretically. Right.
And not to get like super off track, but it is interesting to think about like if he had stayed in the line of succession and his father would have died and he would have taken over. Because up until that point, he's the general of the army. He's doing what the Fire Nation is supposed to be doing. He's like, conquering. He's trying to conquer Bang Si-Se. So when his father died, would he have kept doing all that stuff? Or would he have been actually, let me back off of this a little bit. I don't really want to do this anymore.
I do think in some monarchies, it is common for the prince to like be involved in some way in that way, so that when they do eventually take over and that succession happens, like, oh, this person has like some experience like being in the military, which is so important in monarchies. So I think Iroh, yeah, he would have just like stopped and be like, oh, I'm gonna go sit on the throne now. This was fun.
Be like, actually, we don't kill dragons anymore. Thanks, guys.
We don't do that.
Okay. So what was the most surprising takeaway from this experience?
The most surprising takeaway from this experience of the podcast, of watching the show?
Yes.
You mean the show?
Either or.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't have a good answer for that right now.
Wasn't surprised at all.
I mean, it's not like that I wasn't surprised. I just can't think of like, it's not like there was like a crazy twist that like Azula was good the whole time. Wow, that would have been a crazy twist.
Was the show better than you thought it was going to be, or worse, or what you were expecting?
I mean, I feel like I had not high expectations going in, but like reasonable, like this is a quality. Like I don't think you and Jordan would be doing a podcast about a show that wasn't very good or interesting, or that it would be Jordan's favorite show. But I think it did have more layers for a Nickelodeon kids show than I would have expected. Yeah. But we are talking about all these things and like, that they address like, okay, one of the most surprising things was the whole series when they were in Patsy and there's like that whole subplot with the Dali and they're like turning people into zombies and hypnotizing them and it's like a really creaky like nanny state. Like I wasn't expecting that at all.
Some
like
deep state
when they
stuff
get there,
going on.
yeah, we were just like, oh, this is like unrelated to the final mission of the like Comet and the Fire Lord, and there's just all this other crazy political stuff going on, and we're gonna address it in this like kids show. That was surprising.
I don't think I appreciated it as much, especially because partly like I have this nostalgia for it, and just that the whole story is just kind of ingrained in me at this point. Like for you, fresh, you're like, oh, we have point A, point B, we got to get here, and yeah. Partway through the series, you get this kind of curveball with this political intrigue going on. And yeah, it would be very surprising. But for me, it's like just a part of the story. And so until we did the podcast, I wasn't able to like really break it down. Yeah, it's totally like a random adventure they have to go on.
Well, and does it feel like it is a product of its time? Like that it came out? Does it feel like it came out 10 years ago? Is that what it is? 12?
No, it came out 15 years ago.
Does it feel like it came out 15 years ago?
Half your life ago?
No, it's not like there's like a bunch of dated references or anything in it. And I don't feel like... I don't remember any like cringe moments necessarily.
The Great
Other
Divide.
than Katara kissing this like 12-year-old boy.
Until the very end of the series. You're like, nah.
But is that because... I mean, would you have felt differently 15 years ago? It's hard to say, right? Because now you're like
if I was also a child, probably.
Right. Right. Versus now you're like, well, this is not okay.
Well,
This is
yes,
gross.
exactly. I also feel like, yes, my perspective is very different than if I was, the prime demographic.
18-year-old Jordan rooting and hooting and hollering. Yay, they did it! They kissed!
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I'm not afraid of like, I don't go into it, but yeah, for some reason, just that, because they've kissed before and it hasn't felt as weird as that final kiss. But I definitely feel like it holds up really well from its time period of thinking like what else was on. I mean, it's insane. Like pairing this with like Fairly Odd Parents, it's just weird.
I know. Yeah. And it's just so interesting to consider it. Nickelodeon dubbed it successful enough that they would allow them to have a spin-off, which ended up being darker in some way. It was just like really interesting, like what happens next, just with what.
Which it would be interesting to know. I mean, if you connect more with Korra,
Yeah.
One being a strong, independent female, which you don't know that, but she is.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're older, they're not children.
Mm-hmm.
So watch it and let us know.
I just think something, and to go back to the characters that had some of the best growth, I do think we've mentioned that Aang maybe didn't grow as much, but I think that's because Aang had a moment earlier in the series where he just grew exponentially more than he had any other point. Because when you rewatch it, for me, you go through most of season 1 with Aang just kind of bumbling around and not really wanting to admit that he's the Avatar and kind of like rise up to this occasion until the very end of book 1, where he, wants to save the North Pole and kind of like have this opportunity to save a culture. And then from that point on, like Aang is kind of on this like upward growth and kind of plateaus almost. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that moment where you consider the beginning Aang where he's like, do you want to go penguin sledding with me? And the end Aang where he's like considering mercy and like whether or not to kill somebody actively is it's pretty far from where he begins in the iceberg.
Well, he definitely shows growth. And yeah, end of season 1. And like a reason. There was a reason for him to step up to the best of his ability in that moment. And then, yeah, I think that he had peaked for just the growth that he was able to
realistically do as a 12-year-old boy.
Exactly.
13 at the end of the series. He is 13. Okay,
Well,
he's a teenager.
Well,
So
you
it's
know
cool
what-
that he was kissing Katara.
Well, he's going to turn into a mermaid the 13th year.
I would like to talk more about that. The 13th year came out when I was not 13, and I was mortified to turn 13. I was like, that's going to be me.
Merman.
Yep.
Merman.
Get in the pool.
Get in the pool.
Okay. Moving on.
So now reflecting on the beginning of the series, I remember like we would talk to you about some of the theories you would have. Like, do you remember some of the theories that you had
No,
for
I
the
don't
series?
remember any of them.
You had some moment
wish
of
I
like,
did.
oh, like we haven't seen like a waterbending master. And when we do meet him, I'm curious if they'll have tattoos too, like Aang.
Oh, yeah.
Are we kind of disappointed that other cultures in the Avatar universe don't have like some markings or like something to befit a master of their
Yeah.
element?
Greg made a joke that, like, now that Zuko's in charge of the Fire Nation, maybe he can bring, like, different colors to the fashion of the different nations. Like, hey, Earth Nation, try some, blue. Fire Nation, try green. Like, you don't have to just wear red all the time. It's okay.
That's like it's the Power Ranger rule. Like you can only wear the color of your Power Ranger.
And, like, we've seen, obviously, like, Katara, Suki, they all look great in, like, another nation's clothes.
You
Like,
look great in red.
mix it up.
Oh man, really rocking that globalization.
I also,
Jessica.
like, noticed for some reason on that final episode that Aang's, like, arrows, like, go into his armpits. And I was like, whoa, I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, they kind of like spiral around his arm. I don't know where they end. Like it just ends in the pit because then he has it on the back. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not connected.
But yeah, I am a little disappointed that the waterbenders didn't have, and the earth, like, or that the benders had some kind of like, or masters in general, that they like have something that denotes that like, oh, this is a master I'm in front of. Like they've mastered this.
I think it was a little oversight.
Like
on
they no longer
their
have their
part.
Padawan braid.
So where do you think the series goes from here? Because obviously it continues.
Well, from the small clips of Korra playing on Netflix, when you click by it, it's like in a semi-current future where they have like cars and like street traffic. And yeah, the Korra's like 18, maybe older, I don't know. And there's like hooligans that need to be like taken care of. I think that's like the whole clip.
Hooligans.
Yeah, it's like maybe there's like gangs or something. I don't know. I don't know, it'd be interesting based on like my tangential knowledge. And I think, as I said earlier at the beginning, when I was like, all I knew was that Janet Varney is the voice of Korra, and I like Janet Varney. So yeah, I think I'll like it. Although I wonder if me knowing what Janet Varney looks like will impact my ability to separate her from Korra.
Like Janet, I know you don't look like Korra.
Yeah, tall, blonde hair.
What were some of your favorite things about the series, Avatar: The Last Airbender?
I did laugh quite a bit watching it, even though it's clearly like humor for children. Like my cabbages isn't like high culture, but I laughed every time. I laughed every time watching the intro and Aang like running into that stone. I don't know why. Every time got me.
Every time.
You must be related to Katie because it was the same thing.
I'm not laughing now. Okay.
And I loved like, yeah, getting to know these characters. And yeah, for some reason I was really into getting to know Azula, May, and Ty Lee and like their whole clique. I loved that episode where they have the bonfire at the beach and they're just like hanging out with the Fire Nation kids. That's like the spinoff I would watch, just like high school in the Fire Nation.
Azula and the bad girls. You can't sit with us.
Yeah.
Your fire's not blue.
Her like intimidating boys away from her accidentally.
How about you, Katie? What's some of your favorite things about Avatar: The Last Airbender? You doing this podcast and learning that you smack your tongue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been really fun. Can't ask me after like an hour worth of recording, and I can't.
You can look inside yourself.
Okay, my favorite. What did you ask me?
What is some of your favorite aspects about the series we just finished? For like the third time.
What I do enjoy is that it has been enjoyable every time. I think sometimes when you rewatch shows, it's like, oh god, you know.
Kind of
Yeah.
law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, and yeah, it has been new every time, and it is a little bit different. You notice different things, and you can watch it through a different lens, and Yeah, and we've touched on all sorts of stuff. There's been lots of high points, and it's been really fun to do it with Jessica and Troy, and with people that have never seen it before, and someone who's seen it a ton.
Who? Well, for you, like, I never felt resistance from you to like watch the show in the beginning, but I was also like, anytime I introduce someone to Avatar: The Last Airbender, I have a little hesitation because I'm like, oh, like the first like handful of episodes are kind of rough, and you don't get the sense of what the series will be from those. I mean, you can see that there's like potential in it, but I can't be like, oh my god, so there's like arguably the greatest redemption arc in television history, but I feel like I can't talk about that to you. Here, watch this kid's show.
Yeah, that's on Nickelodeon, which was a big turnoff. Sorry.
Well, and knowing that you have such like that it's so important to you, and it's like, oh, what if I don't like the show, and then what is Jordan going to think of me? I mean, my favorite show for a long time was Flight of the Conchords, and when I started dating Greg, I was like, if you don't like this, I don't know if we can be together, which is a lot of pressure in retrospect. And he watched it and he thought it was fine, and I very seriously considered our relationship at that point being like if we don't have the same sense of humor, like, is this bad? But then lately, Greg's come to it on its own, like watching the DVDs, and he loves it. He can like rewatch them all the time.
You come home and there's Greg like in pajamas, like laughing along with Brett and Jermaine.
Yeah. And so I think part of it too is like, the organicity of like coming to it on your own, being like, maybe I'll try this again. And then like, it's like too much pressure to have that person be like watching you and be like, are you laughing? Isn't that so funny?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But see, Katie had watched a little bit of the end of Korra, and so she knew where...
No, and I had watched the first episode with an ex-boyfriend.
Oh my
dun, dun, dun.
God.
I've told you guys this, right?
I know.
Jessica, I told you, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was when I got back from the tour, and and Bill was like watching Avatar and put it on. I was like, oh no, it's a really good show, and wanted me to start watching it.
Why didn't we have Bill on the show? Oh my god.
Oh my god, can he call in right now?
Well, let's find out. Oh no.
No, he can't.
But with Katie, like I never had us watch it when we were just dating. And I don't know if
he waited till we were locked in after Jessica denied him.
Okay, this makes it sound like I was actively pursuing Jessica. Which, maybe. But yeah, so I had waited until... Okay, I waited until we got back from our honeymoon to be like, so, how about we start this? And I did kind of feel like that thing where I was like kind of like just watching Katie to be like, is she happy? Is she watching this? She's happy? Is she? But I just feel like you just kind of like gave me the space to watch it with you until I think probably season 2, and I think Toph really changed the game. I think Toph.
I also feel like I don't talk enough about Toph. I mean, the fact that a person with a disability is one of the most badass characters in the show, and I feel like that was rare at the time. It's still rare to have people with disabilities, so I think that's really important and really cool.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And just Toph like checks all the boxes for a fantastically inclusive character. We forget the fact that she's non-white, so she is technically a person of color. We can assume she's maybe like Chinese, but we kind of gloss over that fact too. But yeah,
are any of them white though?
Right. See, none of them are white. It's a total like non-white. But if you just go into it blind, not really considering the fact,
but all the voice acters are. Right.
Well, Dante Bosco,
except for Zuko, yeah.
And Mako is of Japanese descent.
But yes, I mean,
Jason Isaacs is in it, who's arguably one of the whitest people in the world.
Who's that?
Zhao. It's Lucius Malfoy. Pale, pasty Lucius Malfoy.
Okay.
But yeah, so I am interested, like, one day when you rewatch the series, like, I would love to hear, like, your take, Jessica, on just, like, the seeds of seeing, like, Zuko and his, like, redemption arc and just watching it from the beginning again and being like, oh, like, I know where everyone's going to end up. And so I think for me, and I think for Katie can agree to this, like, the show just becomes, like, so much more satisfying when you watch it a second time. Obviously, The Great Divide is literally the worst thing. So just skip that one.
Not to Troy. He loved it.
And
I loved it
Ember
too.
players skipped it too.
Ugh.
They like call out skipping that one.
Wait, who does? Who does?
So I rewatched that one before watching the final episodes.
Oh, Ember Island players.
Yeah. And like when they're like recapping and they're like play or whatever, and they're like, oh, the Great Divide, and they're like, oh, let's just go around, and then they just like move on. Like they don't address it at all.
So good. So did you learn anything? Like, I know it's kind of like a loaded question. Did you learn anything like from watching it? Like anything that was a new thing to you?
I mean, I'm sure I learned lots. Nothing comes to mind off the top of my head immediately.
Bending.
Did you learn anything about yourself?
Yeah, I learned that I did learn. So obviously, like, I don't know why I'm such an Azula fangirl. Like, I find it very interesting that I like this, like, psychotic character so much.
You like someone who's, like, showcasing that girls are strong and smart and
she's like, not afraid to
sassy.
speak her mind. And yeah, I do feel like that is very of my personality right now. That's what I'm, like, trying to become, where I'm just, like, sick of men.
Well,
these white old men running our country. And so, like, yeah, Azula's acting like these, like, privileged white men, and she doesn't give a fuck. And I'm like, yeah, girl, you do you. Like, yes, everything you're doing is ultimately bad and wrong, but at least she's taking what she can take and she's going for it.
she's breaking that glass ceiling.
Yeah, and it's all in a bad way, but also, like, again, like, as a villain, I feel like you don't see girl villains like that. And so I think that's also why I felt so betrayed, that, like, they had to weaken her, which I guess is, like, a benefit to her that she was so strong that they had to weaken her, because they didn't weaken Ozai for Aang to take care of, like, you know? So it's just, like, I don't know. Got my craw. But, yeah, I think it's awesome, and I learned that, yeah, that's what I'm about. And it is, like, but, like, Katara is a strong female. Toph, obviously, the strongest, and, like, you know.
I think that's just one of the series' greatest strengths, is that they made the girls as strong, if not more strong, in several areas.
Right, like we said, Suki stronger than Sokka in every way.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they like form their like Captain Planet, where he's like, we have Earth, we have water, and I was like, oh, Sokka's the heart, which we all know in the Captain Planet that the little kid who was heart was the weakest of the Captain Planet team.
Sword and fan. But yeah, I mean, even Aang, like, objectively, like, he's not that toxic masculine character. He's a pacifist. He has lots of feminine energy.
Right, like even Zuko's not even toxic masculinity. Like, I don't
Just
early
grumpy.
Zuko, he's not like anti-girls, right?
No.
He's
No,
just
he's
like
just
wants
awkward.
the avatar.
I mean, Sokka is anti-girl
he's
for, like...
single-minded.
Sokka has misogyny at the beginning of the series, but that gets corrected very quickly in the Warriors of Kyoshi episode.
Right,
Where he's
Suki
like,
puts him in his place.
exactly!
But you could also talk about just that Sokka grew up in a very small tribe where it's probably very traditional.
Right, and the
had
men were
these-
the ones that went off to war.
right, conservative family values, and so he had to like get out of the tribe, go be exposed
Well, even the
to
North
the world.
Pole was anti-girl. They were going to teach Katara.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, you get to go heal people. Which, okay, the whole Katara being able to heal. I like that they address that, like, Katara can't magically heal them anymore. Like, that's off the table. Things like, oh, she'll just heal us. It'll be fine.
Like, no, we used that all up, buddy. You can't do that no more. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we're breaking, like we just said, breaking glass ceilings. Like, Katara gets to be the only, like, combative waterbender in the world. We have Toph, who literally invents a new, like, subgenre of bending. And yeah, it's just
and to again talk about this coming out 15 years ago. I mean,
it was definitely, like, significantly ahead of its time. I think the series would have been way more successful had it come out now. And I'm curious because we have kids watching it now on Netflix who have no idea that it's 15 years. It's older than them, significantly older than them. Like, our friend's kid, like, thinks it came out and stole things from Frozen 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that everyone's going to be watching it, and, like, the themes resonate so much more today. And I'm curious what Nickelodeon will do now with this property. And I think it has a bright future. Right now, we have the Kyoshi novels, which you should read, Jessica. I'm on the second one. It's real good and LGBTQ friendly, which is fantastic.
and apparently kind of dark, so that rules me out. It's too
Really dark.
too
It's
advanced
Oh.
for me.
It's very graphic at times. I'm like, oh, weird. Wow, this is not something I watched in the series, either Korra or Avatar. So we're taking some liberties with what we're able to do in the literature medium.
Sorry, I don't want this to go on forever, but I am shocked that Katara didn't bloodbend in the final episode.
There's no full moon. She wasted her full moon opportunity.
It only happens. Oh, okay. I forgot about that
Yeah.
wrinkle.
Dun, 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 dun.
See, you'll pick
But
up
do you
on
think
that.
she would have?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not like, oh man, too bad it's not a full moon.
Yeah, Zuko leans over, winks to Katara. Hey, no full moon, right? Right? You know what I'm saying? Well, friends, what a journey this has been.
Yeah, what a pandemic this has been.
I know, it's crazy.
Started out, we were just kids, and now we've gone and we've seen the world and saved the world.
I'm glad I have Korra to look forward to.
I know.
It would be sad if there was like nothing.
Then
And
you
apparently Kyoshi Warrior novels.
and all the graphic novels, which are pretty good.
Which I read like a couple pages when I was really motivated after we finished recording the last pod. And then,
How many times have you actually like read a graphic novel or a comic, though?
I read Archie comics.
That
so
counts.
many Archie comics.
Speaking of comics, have you read Bone, the graphic novel?
Mm-mm.
It's from the early 90s. It's real good.
I haven't read that many graphic novels, if I'm honest.
Oh, yeah, I have one that I want you to borrow.
Oh, great.
Earth, Wind,
Fire.
Fire, Air.
Heart.
What element are you?
Oh, what element? What tribe do I subscribe to? I think water tribe.
Katie?
Although, am I more of an earthbender?
Personality-wise?
Yeah,
Or...
I think personality-wise.
Well, if we go with the astrology, the zodiac, you are a Taurus, which is an earth element.
Yeah.
And Katie over here, water girl.
Nope, I'm air.
Are you air?
Shave my head.
You'd be pretty hot with a shaved head and an arrow.
What are you?
What's her face didn't have a shaved head?
Who? Oh, Yang Chen.
Yang Chen. She had hair.
Like the top, like the edge had been kind of like shaved, which I felt kind of weak. I think we just should have shaved off her entire
yeah.
head.
She could have been like Tilda Swinton and
They didn't want people to get
Strange.
confused. They
It's
needed
true.
to make it look a little different.
But either way, you could rock the blue arrow for sure.
Thank you.
I'm an air nomad. I mean, obviously, like, yeah, pacifist, enjoy the world, roaming around.
Enjoy the world.
Yeah, air nomad, air for life.
Okay, well, that's where we're at.
Okay, so Avatar: The Last Airbender is it's just my favorite show, and it was so much fun to watch it. I actually learned some things about the series I didn't already know just from like talking to people with fresh eyes, and even though we're not making a cent from this, it was a really fun thing to do, and I'm happy to spread the love and the knowledge because more media like this needs to exist to empower people with disabilities, empower females, empower people in general, people of color. And I think this show really does a fantastic job of that. And what are you doing listening to me more? Go start it over again. Start buoying the iceberg. Right meow.
Or create a different show. Take
inspiration.
but take our notes of where it was lacking. Make something better.
Don't have your badass female antagonist go crazy is the reason you defeat her.
Right.
That's cheap.
Be
we
better.
deserve better. Yeah.
Yip, yip.
Hooray!
Jessica, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this and starting this adventure with us. Had you not been willing to do it, I don't think we would have gotten it off the ground because it's very hard for me in my circle to find someone who A, hasn't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, and B, has any taste whatsoever. So thank you for checking both those boxes. We really appreciated that.
I'm glad I waited until this opportunity to watch it.
Thank you for waiting.
Aw, I had something, but I lost it. Wait, when we started in January, we didn't even have a name, you guys. Remember?
No, think about names.
Okay, sorry. So what?
That was good.
Jessica,
And now.
any last words?
Appa and Momo forever.
Aw, the real ship.
Appa, Appa.
And thank you to you, our dear listeners, every one of you in Antelope, California, because that's apparently the highest download.
Oh,
It's Antelope,
shout out to Antelope.
Yeah,
More than
shout
Portland,
out.
more than anywhere in Oregon, we have these people in Antelope. Listeners, and also those of you who aren't in Antelope, California, wherever that is. Thank you for listening. If we had 0 listens on this podcast, it would have been really difficult to be motivated to keep going. So
So to all 5 of you, thank you.
so thank you so much. We really appreciated you giving us an opportunity and listening to us dissect a show that maybe is one of your favorites as well. So thank you for letting us not tarnish any of that. So With that, Katie, Jessica, Troy in spirit. Troy's been here the whole time, silent, like a lamb.
Classic.
Yip, yip.
Should we yip yip?
Yip yip.
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 Now I
Yip.
feel like we're like the
Yip, yip.
aliens from the Muppets.
Yip, 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 yip. Yip, 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 yip.
Is that a Nickelodeon thing?
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yip, yip. No, I know all things about pop culture from the 2000s. Quiz me. Britney Spears, NSYNC. I know it all.
Okay, name all the boy band members of NSYNC.
Okay, well, you have Justin Timberlake, you have Joey Fatone, you have Lance Bass, you have JT. Maybe he has a last name. Carl? Is Carl the fifth one?
Did you say Justin Timberlake and JT?
Yeah, isn't there a guy named JT?
Wrong.
JC.
John?
Failed.
JC.
JC
right?
Chavez.
It's JC?
Mm-hmm.
What's the C stand for?
Christ.
Chavez?
Choreographer. He's like a
Ah.
really good dancer.
Jason choreographer.
I don't know.
Maybe I think he's like a music producer.
I'm not into NSYNC.
I think JC Chavez is like the other guy in NSYNC that could have like had Justin Timberlake's career, but he didn't pop off like Justin.
Dang.
didn't pop off.
You
That's
know,
right, pop off.
because it's December, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, the NSYNC version. JT's not even like the lead vocalist in that song. He's like doing backup.
Is it
JT's
JC?
not that special. That's
JT
why.
is special. And
Maybe
how
they
dare
gave it to
you.
JC because of Jesus Christ.
Ooh, touche. Superstar? Jesus Christ Superstar?
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay, name all the members of 98 Degrees, Jessica.
Nick Lachey, Drew Lachey,
Wait, there's
and the
two
third guy.
There's two Lachey's?
Yeah, there's two Lachays.
Are they brothers? Are they cousins?
Yeah, they're brothers.
Are they lovers?
I think they're just brothers.
Well, I mean,
And they're true to their hearts.
be true to your heart. You must be true to your heart.